Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our rock and our Redeemer. Well, this slide here is not of our rock and our Redeemer. This is a picture of Pierre de Fermat, a 17th century French mathematician. Here we go again. Well, in I have the date here somewhere, 1662, Monsieur Fermat developed a principle called the principle of least time. Now, it's a pretty simple idea. It's a pretty simple principle that I think most of us can grasp pretty easily. Jim, if you could show him that slide. Yeah. I get it. Oops. What the principle of least time says is that a beam of light will take, going from point A to point B, will take the least amount of time. It will take the pathway that takes the least amount of time between point A and point B, which may or may not be the pathway of least distance. You got all that from that, right? I know once I explained it, you would figure that, oh, you know what? There's an easier way to do this. Could we have the next slide? Could we have the next slide, please? Okay, this makes it a little clearer. This is the drowning man. Down at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see it says person. All right, the drowning person. Now, the lifeguard, who's up in the upper left there, see him running there? That's what I want my lifeguard to look like. The lifeguard knows that he can go faster on the sand than he can go in the water. Once he hits the water, he is slowed down by the water. The medium through which he travels makes a difference. So if he were to take the green line there, it would be the path of least distance. It would be the shortest path, but it would take him longer because he has to spend more time in the water. All right? But if he takes the purple line, the path with least time, he's going to get to that drowning person a lot quicker because he's spending less time in the water. You with me so far? Okay. Well, I'm glad you've been able to attend Salmon Creek UMC's first Astrophysics 101 class today. And I'm sure you'll be able to go home and explain Pierre de Fermat to all your friends and neighbors, but this really does have something to do with us being here in church today, or really, more to the point, us living our lives. Certainly, if you happened to be the drowning person, wouldn't you want the lifeguard to take the fastest route to you? Isn't that what you would want? Well, let's see how this might describe Jesus. Now remember, Fermat's theorem was about a beam of light, and how often do we describe God and God's manifestation in Jesus as light, right? Jesus says that himself. As well as being the vine, he is the light. In the Gospel of John, he is the light that will clear away the darkness. And yet, throughout Jesus' ministry, he is on a journey, isn't he? He travels all over the place. Read your Gospels. He's here and he's there. He's in Bethel. He's in Galilee. He's in Jerusalem. He is traveling all over the place, just like that beam of light, just like that lifeguard. I mean, we meet Jesus at birth. Where? Bethlehem. You all know where Bethlehem is, right? Right there next to Jerusalem. And he goes everywhere. Sometimes walking, sometimes riding a donkey, sometimes with his disciples, sometimes without, traveling by himself. Sometimes he travels through enemy territory when he goes through Samaria. Not exactly enemies, but not exactly friends either. Jesus takes risks. He goes all over the place. Now, we could look at these journeys of Jesus and all over the map of Palestine And we have to wonder, what is his destination? Where is he going with all of these? Is he going to Bethel, or is he going to Jerusalem, or is he going to his passion and suffering? Is he going to his death? Is he going to his resurrection? We can make arguments for all of those destinations for Jesus' journey. But the truth of the matter is, the point B that Jesus is always moving towards is you. All of his journeys, no matter where they go on the map, are journeys towards you. This is what he talks about when he talks about the indwelling of God within him and the indwelling of him within us. It is this journey that travels many points on the map. But point B is us. It's you and you. Otherwise, what would be the point? He'd sort of be like the Flying Dutchman, right? Going around from port to port but never landing. You are the destination. Now, Pierre de Fermat, I'm sorry to tell you this, had another theorem. Could you put up that next slide, please? There he is, in all his glory. There's his theorem in its glory. A little simpler than the last one. Now, I'm not going to go through the math on this because I can't. I can't. But this is referred to as Fermat's last theorem. He scribbled this in the margin of one of his papers without proof. In other words, it's an assertion. He's telling us that he thinks this is true, but he doesn't actually mathematically prove it to be true. And in fact, it has stumped mathematicians for ages. Hundreds of years, they have tried to prove that this theorem is actually true. And in fact, it's only been quite recently, I think within the last 20 years, with some really sophisticated math and some supercomputers and from people who are a lot smarter than I am, they managed to prove Fermat's last theorem. Now, we face this in our faith life, don't we? We ascribe a great many complexities to Jesus. We say Jesus is this, or he meant that, and when Mark says this, Matthew says that, and John brings this up, and then we go here and we look back at Isaiah and we have all these complexities, and we have all these different ways in which we look at Christ. And you know, these complexities aren't a bad thing. They're not something we should avoid or something to get away from. But the truth of the matter is, when I'm the drowning man, I don't care about those complexities. Right? Look at it this way. If you know the molecular makeup of air, right? The air that's all around us. You know, the nitrogen and the oxygen and the pollution and whatever else is in the air around us. It doesn't help you one bit to breathe. Knowing that. So when things are going well, I admit, it's interesting and helpful, truly, to go through some of these complexities, to look at what did Christ mean by that word? What is the Greek translation, right? We went through that a couple of weeks ago. What is this really all about? But when you're drowning, you just want Jesus to be there, to take the fastest route possible to pull you out. And just like Fermat's last theorem, you can do that without proof. And that is the difference between math and faith. Could we have the next slide, please? So here's Jesus on his journeys. What proof do we have of Jesus journeying through? Well, in many ways, we actually have a lot of proof of Jesus. They wrote about him. That's pretty helpful. There were a lot of people back there that nobody wrote about. But we have another kind of proof, which is the proof of faith, right? Next slide, please. And so this is my confession to you this morning, and my faith as well. I am the drowning man. Like Paul, I want to do what is right, but sometimes I don't. I want to do what is good, but sometimes I don't. I want to remember that Jesus is the vine, Jesus is indwelling with me, but I don't. And when I forget these things, or when I do these things, I start to drown. You, from time to time, are the drowning person. Maybe we're always the drowning people. You want to do what is good, your heart is right, but sometimes you don't. You want to be a particular kind of person, but instead you're this other person that you don't like. What do? Do we look for proof of Jesus? Do we find some complex mathematical formula? Do we look to see if there's some way we can construct just the right theology to make everything work out exactly right? I pray. I want the lifeguard to be with me when I'm drowning. I want the lifeguard to come via the shortest route. And if Jesus Christ is in fact indwelling, well, that route is pretty short. When we go to the beach, I'm sorry, Jim, next slide, please. When we go to the beach, when we're in the water, we look and we see, is there a lifeguard? Is there somebody sitting up there with the big rings and the funny red swimsuit? Is there somebody up there? And we say, oh, good. There's a lifeguard up there. I can swim with some confidence out here in the ocean. Now, how many of you, the last time you went to the beach, went up to the lifeguard and said, could you please give me your credentials? I'd like to see your certificate. Maybe you did do that. Maybe we should do that. But we don't, normally, because we trust. We have faith. We believe that there wouldn't be a lifeguard there unless the lifeguard knew what they were doing. Well, Peter, in this famous scene where he loses a little bit of his faith, and guess who's right there? The lifeguard, pulling him up. And you might remember that when Peter gets out of the boat in this scene, we didn't read the scripture this morning, but you might remember he starts walking on the water, right? He starts out okay, and then he loses faith, and he starts to sink. He kind of becomes the drowning man. This is what Jesus did in his ministry. Became the lifeguard for Peter, for so many others during his ministry, and then for so many others after his ministry. Faith sometimes is like that, where we just need to have faith, even if we think we don't have faith. The drowning man doesn't ask, do I really need a lifeguard? The drowning man says, help. I need a lifeguard. How fabulous. What an incredible gift. What a joy. What a generous God to give His only Son, who suffered bled, died, and was resurrected so that we could go swimming in the ocean of life. Knowledgeable and faithful that we have a lifeguard out there. Because, really, all of us at some point have had to be brave. It takes a little courage to go swimming in the ocean of life. And yet we can do it, all of us. Everyone sitting here, everyone out there, everyone can do this with the knowledge, the faith, that there is a lifeguard watching over us. So that when we do start to drown, when life overwhelms us, when there is sorrow, when there is financial hardship, when a child is struggling, we all know how that list can go on and on. There is a lifeguard to pull us up, to remind us that we do not have to drown. In fact, that lifeguard has promised us life eternal. It's quite a promise. One for which we do have proof. The resurrection of Jesus Christ. Next slide, Jim. And that proof, quite frankly, is proof enough for me. And I hope it is for you. Amen. Our closing song today is